pal.
And there we are. We're live.
Brilliant.
So, welcome, Marcus Pearson. So, those of you who maybe went through the bio at the start, I haven't read the bio underneath on YouTube. Marcus is captain at the moment of his golf club. He'll tell us all about the club now and himself. Reason I was so keen to get him on here, particularly where we are, having just opened our golf courses again in England, is we've been, we've back and forth a couple of times on Twitter in recent weeks. And then when I started digging a little bit more into your sort of Twitter activity over the last few months, you've got some really interesting things to say about golf in general, the industry. You're certainly, quite open about what you say about your club and areas you think they do well, areas maybe you think that they could do a little bit better. And, as I said to you before we came live here, I sort of refer to you a little bit as like fresh meat from somebody in my job of just seeing someone with some real strong ideas and in a lot of cases with, some pretty good arguments to back them up. And just, I'm just really interested to see how you're going to sell some of these ideas, but also how you might, wish to get them through.
Okay.
Because that's half the challenge, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah.
I guess the place to start is so that everyone can kind of know your background and to sort of fill in the voids a little bit of just how you're pretty well qualified to hold these opinions in the first place. So about yourself, really introduce us to yourself.
Yeah, lovely. Right, so as you said, Marcus Pearson, I am captain of Scraptcoft Golf Club, which is based in Leicestershire, and we are, well, crikey, like many clubs, obviously coming out the back of probably the worst year in the club's history, probably with the exception of the period between sort of 1939, 1944. But we better get that one in. But Scraptcoft, sort of a typical provincial golf club established in 1928 on land that was gifted by a couple of local businessmen, built the course themselves, and obviously it sort of mushroomed from there. We're not an airs and graces golf club by any stretch of the imagination. As I was saying to you before we came on air, when I'm meeting and speaking with prospective new members, I describe it as a working men's club with a golf course attached to it. We want, we welcome everybody in with open arms, as I'm sure every golf club would say that at the moment, but genuinely we're a very friendly, open, welcoming community in terms of the club itself, largely driven by the fact that the majority of people that are there that have been there a reasonable period of time, most have sort of worked in some form of manufacturing or construction or a manual type role, so there's a degree of openness, a degree of banter. And there's a lot of ex-sportsmen there. We've all played sort of team sports, physical sports in the past, and the golf's become a progression. Like most clubs, we've got the old guys as well, but generally the old guys are just as jovial and just as willing to get involved as the younger lads that we have there. So it's a really nice mix in terms of what we have as a membership, and a course that really is it's a fantastic course for every sort of golfer, because it's not overly long, it's not overly hilly. Every time you go there, it seems like there's another 10 trees appeared from somewhere. So it's a very typical sort of inland parkland type course, but one that's you can play driver off your tee and try and smash it as far as you can. If you do that, you've got to be straight. Equally, if you can't hit it very far, but you can hit it straight, you can get around and you can still make a score. So from that, from the golfing perspective, it's everything that I would wish for in a golf course. It's not flash. It's got no airs and graces, no delusions of grandeur, and we're really lucky that we've had a very strong membership that have supported the club through what we've been through over the course of the last sort of 3 months or so. Although I'd say 5 months with the work winter that we've come out of. In terms of my sort of relationship with Scraptcoft, I joined the club probably about 11 years ago. I started playing golf when I was about 25, 26, so that would have been 25 years ago. or 24 years ago, when my knees gave up and football was no longer an option. I needed to find something to do. Started playing golf because it was introduced to me by some guys that I used to go to the pub with, who sort of explained that, you know, it's not an old man's game. Come along, get involved in it. Oh, and by the way, you can smoke while you're doing it rather than having to wait till half time. So, you know, perfect at the time. We don't endorse that. It's bad for your health, obviously. Yeah. But I I started it, and a typical route that a lot of people get into it. You know, I sort of went with the guys that had introduced me to the local driving range. Hated it, couldn't do it. Was one of these, by nature, is one of these people that if I couldn't do something first time, I didn't want to do it. I've always been like that since I was a kid, apparently. Hated it until I hit the first ball that actually went in the air. Yeah. The minute that first ball went in the air, it was like, wow, this is great. This is like the thing. And that was 24 years ago, and I never looked back.
It's interesting you say that. I think you're, I mean, I was talking recently to Richard McGill on this podcast about that he owns Golf Hubber, and he was saying it's about that one shot. And when he first said it, I didn't really get what he meant. Mm-hmm. He said it's about that one shot that makes you think, oh, I could have been a pro. Well, and you just described virtually the same thing, haven't you?
Yeah, but isn't that the you know, that ultimately is the best thing about this game, is the fact that they don't happen very often, but there will be that one moment around every couple of rounds where you will hit that one. I won't say drive, because none of us can hit a driver like the pros can, but we can hit an approach shot to 2 foot. We can chip in. We can hole a 30-foot putt. We can hit that shot that comes out the bunker without it sort of flying out knee high and nearly killing somebody over the other side of the course. And you think, there isn't a pro on this earth that in that moment, in this position, couldn't have hit that shot any better than I've just done it.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and that, to me, that's the beauty of the game. You know, none of us could run 100 meters as fast as Usain Bolt. You couldn't do it. However much you trained, you couldn't do it. We couldn't play Premier League football. You know, we can't play golf to the same standard every day of the week as the pros. But that one shot, that one moment, you think, come on, then let's have a look at you. And that, you know, that's the reason that, you know, I'm sure over the course of the last 8 weeks, 9 weeks, there will have been people missing that feeling. And well, they'll get back on the course this week or whenever it will be, and it'll be like, yeah, that's what I've missed. You know,
Funny, I was stood next to the first tee for the first shot back on Wednesday morning. 7:30 tee time, and it was a guy playing on his own actually, and he stood on the tee and he looked nervous as I was recording him. I was recording him from the side, so you wouldn't be able to see where it went anyway. And to be fair to him, he hit an absolute dream down the middle, and I was really pleased for him because he looked scared. I think he said it had been sort of something like, because of the rain we'd had as well, I think he said it was something like 12 weeks since he'd swung a club. Yeah. So
I mean, as I say, so I started with these guys and didn't join a club. You know, we used to go and use a local 9-hole pay and play course, and you know, we'd go after work and play 9 holes, or you know, hit some balls on the range. And after 6 months or so, I thought, right, I'm sort of starting to get the bug for this, you know, and went and bought myself my first set of clubs and joined a club called Whetstone Golf Club, which is another very similar sort of setup to Scraptcoft. That's a privately owned club, but obviously, you know, again, a really friendly, welcoming club. And I played there for probably best part of 7, 8, 9 years. Then kids came along, and it was a case of, can I afford to play golf? Time-wise, no. Money-wise wasn't so much the problem, but certainly time-wise was a factor. Left Whetstone from a membership perspective and it didn't really play for a couple of years, you know, and got to that point where it was like the clubs were still in the garage, but I'd sort of go in and pick one up now and again and maybe go into the back garden.
Why do you think that happened? Because the same thing happened to me. Before I came to work in golf, so I came into golf as a job when I was 27, and 5 years I went without playing, being a member, whatever. Why was it like that for you?
I think at the time, in the early days, it was there were a number of factors to it. It was more of an issue, not so much of an issue when my son was born. He'll be 22 in August. More when my daughter came along, which was sort of about 4 or 5 years later. But my son suffers with ADHD,
right,
and a little bit of Asperger's. And at that sort of time, 5, 6, 7 years of age, he and we as a family were having the sort of challenges that a lot of families go through with kids on the autistic spectrum, with schooling, with trying to get support and diagnosis, treatments, approaches, etc. And it was literally a case of, it didn't feel the right thing to do when we'd had all the issues and the challenges through the week, and all the stress associated with that. For me then to disappear off to play golf for 5, 6 hours and leave my wife with a young baby and my son who was a bundle of energy, running up and downstairs, running around all over the place, very demanding of attention. So it was really just out of the order of priorities dictated that actually there are other things I need to be focusing on at this point in time. So it wasn't so much that I fell out of love with the game. It was just a case of, is this the right thing to do at this point in time? And quite an interesting sort of, I guess, comparison with that sort of gap that I had then, albeit that was probably a longer gap, 3 or 4 years before I really started playing again.
Yeah.
But I have to admit that over the course of the last sort of 9 weeks, I sort of started to get the same feeling. It's like, have I really missed golf as much as I thought I would?
I know what you mean. Not so much in the golfing sense. For me, my thing like that has been football coaching. And I've been a first team manager for, I think it's 12, 13 years now. So coaching for 15. And do you know what? I have not missed football 1 second since this lockdown. Not a training session, not a match, nothing. I still speak to like my management team and the coaches and that sort of thing. We're on a WhatsApp group all the time. When this is all over, we'll still go on nights out, that sort of thing. I have not missed a moment, and that has, I was 99.999% finishing at the end of the season anyway.
Yeah.
This has actually helped me like relax into the decision not to coach anymore. I think a lot of people in a lot of areas of the country might end up that way. People that maybe used to go to the pub too much might now realise, what, it's not actually that essential that I go to the pub every Friday with the lads.
And it's a damn size cheaper to stay at home and have a beer or a bottle of wine at home than it is to go to the pub.
I know you're a gym goer, aren't you? Over the last year, I
was until it got shut. Yeah.
I've become almost an addict to it. It's part of my week. My weekday thing has been first thing in the morning down there, and that is something I'm missing a lot. I'm still trying to do things at home. I know you've been doing things at home. I'm really missing that, and I can't wait until we can get back into it. I'm hopeful my gym will open a little bit earlier. Than some, because it is a PT gym, a one-to-one type gym. It's not.
I think they can now open if they've got the space and the capacity to sort of be able to do it sort of outside.
That's it. I mean, if it were a day like today, it's a lovely sunny day when we're filming this. But I think with the nature of the sort of work that we do, they'd have to do so much work to get everything outside. But I'm hoping it's not too long for that. But have you been missing that?
Yeah, I can see where my son gets some of his autistic tendencies from, because I'm sort of very much a routine orientated person, or I find it very easy to get into a routine. So my normal pre-COVID routine was alarm clock goes off at sort of 5:15 in the morning. I take the dog for a walk, get back home at sort of 6:15 time, quickly into my gym kit, in the car to the gym that's sort of 2-minute drive down the road, in the gym at 6:30, and I'd do an hour in the gym Monday to Friday, and then that would be my sort of start to the day.
Very similar. Very similar.
Day. And you know, my the not having the ability to go to the gym, my biggest fear with all of this was like, crikey, what's going to happen? You know, how am I going to cope with not doing something? So probably like many people, I went on the internet and bought a set of these resistance bands that it seems like every time I open Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, there's another pop-up advert from somebody selling these home resistance bands. So we put an order in for a set of those very early in the lockdown situation. The mind about global demand for PPE going through the roof. I think global demand for these resistance bands must have been equally difficult, because it took ages. But I sort of got into my latest addiction is body combat. Now, I've never boxed, I've never done any form of martial art or anything like that in my life. But I needed to find something that I could do that was going to give me a, you know, just get the blood flowing as much as it was, whilst not having access to weights or a spinning bike or whatever. I'm not a big runner, and I stumbled across this body combat thing, and I thought I was reasonably fit, and within 10 minutes of starting the first session, I was blowing out my backside and thinking, what the hell have I put this one on for? But I started doing that, and I do that sort of pretty much every morning now, and you know, I can't say I feel the same sort of fitness, but at least it's given me the peace of mind of I'm doing something, and I don't feel quite so guilty when I have a beer at night or at the weekend. That's for sure. I don't know.
It is that routine, definitely. You're right about the routine. I've never really had one, other than, you know, be in work at this time, and what I think one of the biggest failings I had for years was what I'm slipping back into on a routine level is, you come over, I'll train tonight. I won't get up quite as early. I'll train tonight. And of course, if you have a rotten day in work, which has happened over the last couple of weeks for most of us managers in England, there's been, you know, I'll catch up. I'll train on the weekend this week, and I'm still getting through it. I'm not missing anything. I'm doing the runs that I plan to do, but I'm out of that routine. Probably, ironically, at the time where I could do with it the most, really. You know, just
I always train first thing in the morning, because I know that if I was reliant upon doing it after I've done a day's work, it wouldn't get done. So it's like, get up, get it done, get on with the rest of the day. I can't say it does any difference to my golf or anything, but you know, it's something to do in the week. But as I say, so you know, in terms of that sort of side of it, I stopped playing for a couple of years, did the family thing, and then sort of gradually, again, really through the pub. A couple of guys that I used to drink with were members at Scraptcoft, and they sort of said, "Look, come and have a game, and you know, see what's what." And I went up, and you know, you get the bug again, don't you? And this would have been probably what, 2000 and maybe 2008, 2009, something like that. Back in the day when you had to go before, you know, you had to get a proposer and a seconder and go before the committee, or the captain and the vice captain for a formal interview. We don't do formal interviews anymore. They're called welcome meetings.
I think that's quite common.
So, you know, went before the captain, and you know, I vividly remember sitting down before the captain, a guy called Paul Lowe. He's still alive. Paul's a great guy. He's 10 years older than me, and he looks like he's 10 years younger, which is really sickening. But I sat down before Paul with my seconder, and you know, the flannel, tell me a little bit about yourself and when you come and this, that, and the other. And the question comes up, why do you want to join Scraptcoft Golf Club? And I was like, okay, right, this is the chance where I've got to give him the answer that he's looking for. And so, you know, well versed. I said, well, I've played the course a couple of times, and I've always found it really enjoyable and challenging. And I think it's the place for me to come and improve myself as a golfer, and you know, develop my skills and improve my handicap, etc. And you know, and that's why really I'd like to join. And he went, let me just stop you there. The Scraptcoft Golf Club, we don't need good golfers. We need good clubmen.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, fair enough. Well, that's nice to hear, because I'm not a particularly good golfer anywhere. I wasn't at the time. Not a particularly good golfer, so I'd fail miserably on the first count, but I might be able to help you out on the second bit. And that was it. You know, I took membership there. got into the sort of the swing of the club, built I knew some people there already, obviously, as I say, because they'd introduced me, widened the circle of people that I knew, and just sort of enjoyed my golf quite steadily for the next sort of 6, 7, 8 years. Flirted with joining committee about 3 or 4 years ago when the club sort of suggested that they might want to look at launching a marketing committee. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we need to do something about marketing. And we've heard that you've got a background in that. And I went, well, not necessarily marketing, but if you need some help, then I'll get involved. And I sort of sat on committee for 18 months and resigned. I thought, this is not for me. It's not the way it's not the way I operate. I don't think my personality is a particularly good fit for what we're trying to do or how you're trying to do it. It's probably best if I step away. And went back, carried on enjoying my golf, played with as many people at the club as I did, and I knew the vast majority of the active membership. And so we were coming towards where would it have been? 2000. I lose track of time. We're 2020 now, 19. Early part of 2018. This sort of the club structure is obviously you've got the captain. The captain approaches somebody who wants to be his vice captain, and
they still pass it on at your club.
Well, the idea is the captain, the incumbent captain, will identify a candidate or potential candidates that he feels would be a good fit. He would then approach them and ask them obviously if they were interested in the position. Assuming they were, he would then make the recommendation to the management committee that this is the individual that I would like to be my vice. And the management committee then ratify that recommendation and would place it before the management, before the members at the next AGM. So that sort of work. Our AGM normally is sort of May time. In fact, our AGM should be Monday coming. But normally that's what would happen. So your captain would have his vice, and you'd sort of progress that way. And then the job of the vice captain incoming would be, the incumbent vice captain would then be to find his vice during his vice captaincy year. So
that's quite common.
Yeah. So going back to sort of 2018, early part of 2018, I knew the previous captains. A lot of the previous captains, I knew them really well. The 2018 captain had obviously got his vice, who was an older gentleman, lovely guy again, but probably out of touch with the majority of the active membership, if that makes sense. Knew all the seniors, played in the seniors, but didn't know that anybody probably under the age of 60 didn't really know that many people in the club, and was having a real problem getting a vice captain. And this would have been sort of March time, and I was sort of approached one Sunday dinner time, would you be interested in considering the captaincy of the club for 2020? And it was like, nah, it's not for me. I've been on committee. It's not. I can't see myself doing that. I just want to be a member. No, count me out. As the year progressed, it became apparent that the 2019 captain was having a real job finding a vice. Right. So I sort of went back to him with a list of names of people that I thought would make really good captains. And sort of said, look, have you thought about asking these people who he didn't know, or I didn't think he knew, but I knew from playing with them and so on and so forth. And he said, I've asked them all, nobody's interested, nobody wants to do it. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And I thought, I didn't think anything more of it at the time. This would have been about sort of late October, early November of sort of 2018. So he's coming to almost the beginning of his captain's year, starts January the 1st at Scraptcoft, and he's coming to the beginning of the year and he's not got a vice. I'm thinking, Christ, this is terrible. Went with our pro and a couple of other guys we used to sort of in the winter we'll go and have a sort of a couple of days out, or maybe play on a Thursday morning at a different club. And we'd gone away. There was a group of us and we sort of played around a golf, and we're in the bar afterwards and having a chat. And somebody, it was actually Paul Lowe, came back over to me and he said, "Why haven't you thought about taking up the captaincy? We need a captain. Why don't you do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'm working full time. Work's really busy. I've got the family. I like playing golf. I don't necessarily like the politics of it. I'm not really sure for me." And he said, "Look," he said, "there's a hell of a lot of mystique talked about what's involved in being club captain. The perception that you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to be here for that game, you've got to go with the first team, you've got to he said, you do it the way you want to do it. It's your year. You're in charge for that year." So
is there a document? Is there a document of any description at your club?
There's a terms of office, shall we say.
Right.
Are
they quite loose?
Well, the terms of office very loosely based around the things that the club would want you to do in certain situations. So it's the typical thing: represent the club official, at official functions, host captains of the scratch match play opposition, and so on and so forth. In terms of sort of structure to it, it's fairly loose in reality.
You see, because from my perspective and from perspective of a lot of people that would probably listen to this, that in general terms, sometimes you'll get a year where it works really well, but in general terms, the lack of not knowing what you're signing up for is what creates the biggest problems in clubs, because it's not specific. And I mean, maybe the reason a lot of people turned it down in the first place at your club might be that they thought it was a lot bigger job than it was. It's certainly something I've experienced myself over the years. But if I were asked at the club, not that I would be, but if I were asked at the club that I'm a member of, I would immediately turn it down, because it is a monster of a job there. There's no manager. It's quite a big club with a lot of members in a very competitive market, and you've got to manage the committee. Everything is your responsibility. It's really, really old-fashioned.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a slightly different. It's a slightly different sort of structure, because ultimately, although you're invited to take the position of vice captain, future vice, you're ratified by the members. Now that didn't happen for me, and as was pointed out quite pointedly, you're not a proper vice captain, and you won't be a proper captain because you haven't officially been approved by your peers. And it's like, and that's a really nice footing to get off to. Sort of, thanks. I've put myself, I've put my head over the parapet here. I've taken it on because nobody else wanted to do it, and to hear that sort of feedback, and it was only from one individual. It was a bit like, right, okay, well, that's not really the sort of stuff that I need to hear, but
no,
thanks for that, and let's light the blue touch paper then and see what happens.
You said one thing there. I don't want to miss it. I wrote it down in front of myself. You said that you were in touch with a group of people, and you described them as I knew the active members.
Yeah,
because this guy was a senior, blah blah. I'm interested in that.
Okay.
Something I've heard. What do you define as the active membership?
Well, yeah, it is an interesting sort of comment to make. To me, I describe the active membership as the guys that get engaged with putting money into the club. So the guys that don't turn up, put the shoes on in the car park, play 18 holes of golf with the same people every week at the same time, walk off the 18th green back to the car park, put the shoes back on and drive home. To me, the active membership at a club is the guys that play, that then go in the clubhouse afterwards, have a drink, chew the fat, make their opinions known, rightly or wrongly. But the ones that actually want to engage within the social atmosphere of the club, if that makes sense. I'm not saying to go to all the club functions, the dinner dances, or whatever might take place, but they see the golf club as a social venue as much as just something to do for 3.5-4 hours on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning. So
I know what you mean, but I'm somewhere close to that guy you just described. I do go into the clubhouse after we've played always. We do have a drink. I might go Sunday lunch a couple of times a year if it's someone's birthday, that sort of thing. But the golf club is not, that I'm a member of, is not the centre of my world, and it's not the centre of my social life. I certainly would never suggest to my poor wife that was our Saturday night out, that, you know, it goes with dinner, dance at a golf, because, you know, early in my career, she came to enough of those because it was part of my job that she came to one of those back then. But I'm probably somewhere in the middle of it. But, you know, I always, you know, I try not to think of it as a club manager when I'm at the club that I'm a member of, and I'm always just really interested in that. And you know, people being approached for committee always come from the same sort of group, and I'm just thinking, you know. We all pay the same subs. I know people put money over the bar, but if it were just a golf course and there weren't a clubhouse, a lot of clubs would be actually financially better off, quite significantly. Not that you could charge the same amount. You wouldn't be able to charge the same sub. So it's probably...
that's probably something we'll touch on in a bit. But, you know, so in terms of that, obviously, I took the captaincy on, and realistically, it was my vice captaincy year. Should have been a fantastic, or in fact, should have been. It was, or would have been, a great introduction to the role of captain.
Yeah.
Because the guy I was vice to, as I say, lovely bloke, but didn't knew the senior section, knew all the guys in the senior section, you know, because that's who he played with. Yeah. But he didn't know the guys in the rest of the club. So in terms of where there were issues or challenges or moans or grumbles or complaints, they tended to come through me. And, you know, be under no illusions that the predominant role of the captain of any golf club is to be the ear that gets bent in the first instance by the majority of members who have an axe to grind or something not quite right, whether that's there's no toilet paper in trap 3, can you sort it out, to, you know, why is there no sand in the bunkers? You know, that's the sort of thing that as captain you're going to get to sort out.
So sorry, just to clarify, you don't have a manager at your club, do you?
Our structure is we have a head professional, and our pro's brilliant. You know, in terms of sort of commercial acumen, getting sort of promoting the club in terms of supporting things like the Leicestershire and Rutland Alliance, you know, which is an opportunity for, I don't know whether you have them down where you're from, but the Alliance.
No, nothing like it, but I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, you know, he'll a dozen, 20 represent members from Scraptcoft will sign up every Thursday and go and play another course in Leicestershire with up to 100 other golfers. You know, we probably take more of our members on the Alliance than any other club in the county do. So he champions that. He runs a brilliant pro shop. You know, the way he stocks and manages his pro shop is fantastic. I think he works with the TGI partnership, or he's a member of the TGI buying group. So, you know, he's brilliant in that capacity, and fantastic in terms of pulling the membership together. You know, he pretty much knows every member of the golf club. When new members join, you know, he's brilliant about explaining the way things work and making sure that they're fixed up for a game. And, you know, he's everything that you would want in a pro from that perspective.
The reason I ask about the manager, whether you have one or not, is I think when there isn't one, I do think it makes the captaincy probably twice as difficult, because I've always found the biggest challenge for me, and this, I mean, the last few years I've worked with chairmen as well as captains. But in my time in Wales, it was captains were the chairman basically for 1 year, you know, and then they're gone. But I think the biggest challenge for me initially would always be to say, and this is new committee people as well, listen, when somebody walks up to you in the bar and opens with the line, you know, oh, you're on committee, just say to them, whatever it is you're about to say, speak to the manager about it.
Yeah,
because unfortunately, it's impossible for you to know all the context of it all. You just mentioned one, you know, we hear it in every golf club in the country. There's no sand in the bunkers.
Yeah.
There's plenty of sand in the bunkers. You lot as golfers have all dragged it to the back of the bunker. That's where the sand is.
Yeah.
And then the greenkeepers go in on a Monday morning and push it all back into the middle again. But, sometimes as a committee person, you wouldn't necessarily know the answer. And you can end up having a pretty unpleasant time and not wanting to go in the bar after your round of golf.
That's right, yeah.
But if there isn't someone, you can say, listen, just speak to the manager about it. And if you're not happy with his reply,
we've got Simon in the pro shop, and then Rebecca and Arshad in the office. And I guess, loosely, they perform some of the roles that you would expect a manager to do in terms of administrative aspects of managing membership process and payments and answering phones and organising society days in collaboration with Woody whilst they were a thing. I would say, and I'd love to say on record, I think we have the best club treasurer that you could ever wish for as a member of a golf club. If you understood as the average member of our golf club just what our treasurer does, you would be astounded. And you sit in meetings with him, and he basically will say every time, I treat the club's money as if it was my own, and I don't like spending my own money.
Yeah.
And that's not because he's tight, he's frugal. It's because he's sensible and he gets it, and he understands the club's financial position from top to bottom. He's almost like an FD.
Yeah.
So in terms of that,
as a structure, I mean, the club that I play at has got a very similar treasurer. He does way too much. I tell him whenever I speak to him that he spreads himself way too thin. But the concern I have is, selfishly, as a member, it's not for his health or his sanity or anything else. He seems to cope quite well with it, and he's a smashing bloke. But when the day comes that he says, I'm going to step down, that is a mammoth task. It is a monster of a job that you now have to fill.
Yeah.
And, that's the problem structurally, is that it can really give you some problems.
Well,
but if you've, so committee-wise, you mentioned it before we started recording, but so you sit on the committee, but you're a non-voter, is that right?
Yeah. So basically, the management structure at Scraptcoft is such that ultimately, I mean, the top of the tree is the club chairman. And if you were saying who's the guy that ultimately makes the decisions, it's the club chairman. So he sits there at the top of the tree. The committee structure, obviously, chairman, treasurer sits as a voting member of the management committee. We then have the various sort of subcommittees, each of whom has a chair, and the chair of each of the subcommittees sits on management. So that includes things like the house committee, the greens committee, handicap and comps, marketing, or social and marketing, as we call it. I probably miss the supporters committee. I've not quite grasped the difference between the supporters committee and the social committee and what have you. But the subcommittees, and each of the committee chairs sits on the management committee as a voting member, along with the club president. The club president doesn't have a vote per se. I believe he has the casting vote in the event of a tie. But again, the club president is, if you ever needed anybody to understand the intricacies of the club rules, our club president would be the person that you'd put on University Challenge for it. He's an encyclopedia, encyclopedic knowledge of our club rules it's amazing. So we have a under normal circumstances management meeting every month where the relevant subcommittee heads will present their reports, and then relevant club business will be discussed. And if there's anything contentious, it gets voted on and then it gets passed.
Right.
And
I think that's fair enough. And to your credit, I mean, I've attended a few lectures with a few people about club setups and everything else. A good one I saw was a guy called Kevin Fish, who's a golf club consultant and former golf club manager. And what you described is roughly what he said your ideal setup would be. That you have a whole load of committees, and the chairs sit on the management board or the committee, whatever you call it, and they all feed into the one place. And a chairman, it's not the captain is the chair for 1 year and then leaves. So you know, it sounds like structurally, you've got it pretty right there.
There is a slight challenge in so much as obviously I go, I'm invited to attend, as is the lady captain, so we're invited to attend. But the chairman is also extends an invitation to every elective member of the club. So effectively, an elective member is somebody who's volunteered to sit on a committee. And if they so wish, they are entitled to go and attend a management meeting as well. They don't have a vote.
How many people are in the room then? Because you keep adding people into this mental picture I have. How many people are in this room now?
Thankfully, not every elective member takes up the opportunity. But it wouldn't be uncommon to sit in a management meeting with 13, 14 people, each of whom are entitled to speak and express their views and their opinions. So, you know, and this is whether it's unique to
how many votes?
How many votes? Just the committee chairs. So the official management committee, as I say, consists of 7 people.
That's up there, that, because it sounded on paper like you nearly had it all spot on. I do know a club that I used to work at, but it wasn't while I was working there. You used to have meetings with 24 people in it, but only 14 could vote. Yeah. So you could have a meeting where maybe 2/3 of the meeting felt one way, but it wasn't the right 2/3, and the sort of huge minority would have the most voting members thinking one way, and that's what would go through. I think it was like the Electoral College in America. Yeah, the majority loses.
It's an interesting one, and you know, I guess there's a part of me that sort of says I can see why the current chair extended an invitation out to every elected member to make them aware that there was an opportunity for them to attend should they wish. From a business perspective, and perhaps to put some context in it, in my professional career, having sort of left school at 16, I went to work for NatWest Bank and spent 14 years working through various roles within retail banking, up until about 2000, when I suddenly woke up one morning and thought, what am I doing here? It was literally just a case of, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm really not happy, and I need to move on. Unfortunately, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point in time, but I just reached the point that enough was enough. Spoke to one of my clients at the bank. At the time I was managing sort of business accounts. Spoke to one of my clients and said, look, I'm jacking it in. I'm sorry, but I've had enough. And he said, well, actually, it's funny you should say that. He said, I really want to get out of my business. I've had enough as well. But I need somebody to sort of come in and run it for me whilst I sell it on. Would you be interested? And I sort of said, well, I've got nothing else to do. So yeah, I might as well do it. And found myself working in a, 400, 500,000 pound turnover business, very, very, very small. And ran that effectively for 12 months, helped the guy sell it. Taught me a very valuable lesson, actually, that if you were going to go into business turnaround or business consultancy of any nature, certainly like that, maybe taking some equity investment as part of your salary package might not be a bad idea, because when he subsequently sold it for the best part of £3 million, it was like, thanks very much, you've got my business to where I need it to be. Now you're redundant, and that's I learned a lot. I learned a lot, but didn't really sort of serve me a great deal of purpose. So there I was, sort of done a good job, and he gave me a fantastic reference. But I was looking for a job, and was basically placed by a recruitment agency into an organisation that does business consulting. They were looking for people that could sort of bring relevant business experience and were used to working with small businesses, growing businesses, and could sort of go in and do sort of consulting type work with them. I went on a 6-month contract I think I signed my first 6-month contract with them in June 2005, and left them in November 2015 when the business sort of was transferred into a different ownership. But over the course of the last, where would it be, 2005 to now, 15 years, I've spent the vast majority of my time working with small, medium-sized businesses, turnover up to sort of £50 million, helping them to understand the challenges that their business is facing, that their market is facing, that they may be facing as a management team, and helping them to sort of identify and put strategies together to overcome them. And more importantly, you know, helping them to access various forms of government or European funded business support that can help contribute towards the cost of it. So, you know, from that perspective, and this sort of leads us in perhaps to this discussion around where you picked up some of the tweets that I put out. My background over the course of the last sort of 15 years or so has been very much targeted around helping businesses to understand what good looks like, and how they can get there.
Yeah.
And sort of struck me over the course of what we've been going through in the last sort of 7 or 8 weeks or so, as to, and it wasn't directed at our golf club. It was a general expression of an opinion around, you know, largely born out of you know, the likely public inquiry that will come into the, you know, when we start picking through the bones of how the government handled the coronavirus crisis. There's undoubtedly going to be a public inquiry, and sort of looking at that, I thought, I wonder, as we come through this, how many golf clubs will actually, and golf club committees will actually sit down and do a critical appraisal of how they handled the management of their business through the coronavirus crisis. Not necessarily to you know, for the fact you can't go back and change it, but to use that as a critical opportunity to learn what they did well, what they didn't do so well, what they can't do again in future. And use that to sort of perhaps inform their future business model.
Yeah.
Because looking at, again, you'll have picked up the tweets, and I've responded to a couple of them, and I, you know, it's great to see, and we've seen it at Scraptcoft. You know, we opened our doors on Wednesday, as most of the clubs in the country did. Since Wednesday, we've introduced 7 new members. We've got another 3 applications that are in process, and I'm picking up tweets that you know, people are saying that's fantastic. You know, golf club membership applications are flying. You know, I can see the green shoots of recovery, and this could be, you know, coronavirus could be the kickstart that golf clubs need to sort of drag them out of the malaise that they've been in. And I'm sort of sitting there thinking, you know, could be. But you might want to give consideration to the fact that, you know, that there's 6 million people currently taking benefit of the furlough scheme.
Yeah.
You know, 6 million people. Now, they're not all golfers, granted, but there's 6 million people sitting currently on furlough, which is a fifth of the UK's working population currently aren't working. Now, what does that mean for golf clubs? Well, it might mean that there are currently golfers who are not members of golf clubs that are sat at home, now golf courses have reopened, realizing that the only way they can play in the next couple of weeks is if they're a member of a golf club.
Correct.
Great. So maybe is creating an opportunity for people to make that step into, I'll join a golf club because it's the only way that I'm going to be able to play. And, you know, we don't want to wish ill on anybody. Let's hope that all of those people that are in that situation, that have taken that step because they're currently on furlough and they've got some time on their hands and they want to play their golf and they want to be a member, go back to their jobs in October or before October when the furlough scheme ends. The flip side that I took was, yeah, fantastic. Might be some short-term interest that you're taking in on incentive-based deals where these people are paying monthly direct debits. But what happens in October if their job finishes, the furlough scheme comes to an end, they've got no money, the golf season's finished and we're coming to winter, you've potentially created a situation where for 3 months you've had 150, 160 quid. These people will have come and benefited from the use of your golf course for 3-4 rounds a week. You know, average price of what, £3-4 a round. They've got no loyalty to your club. they disappear off into the sunset, having said, thanks very much, I've enjoyed my 3 or 4 rounds a week for the last 12 weeks, but now I'm off. And the risk is what you've actually done is you've compromised your existing membership and reduced the opportunity for them to play, and effectively sort of said to them, yeah, we really appreciate the fact that you stood by us when the weather was poor, and you couldn't get on the course because it was closed or it was in poor condition, and you stood by us when we were shut for 7 or 8 weeks because of coronavirus, and you carried on paying your fees. And but unfortunately, we chased the money. We reduced the amount of opportunity for you guys to then get a return on your investment and some value for money, because more competition on where are we at the minute? If I look at our start sheet, probably a maximum of 66 tee times a day.
It's not many at the moment. I think people have got patience at the moment, but it won't last long.
It won't last forever, and I've already had members from our club sort of ring me up and sort of say, look, I'm at work. I can only, I work Monday to Friday. I don't live within 2 miles of the golf course. I finish work at 5 o'clock. The last tee off 6 o'clock. And I'm being told that I can't play consecutive days. The only days I can play are Saturday and Sunday. And I'm being told I've got to play one or the other. And these are guys that are paying £1,100 a year for a seven-day membership, have stood by the club, and are now being told, yeah, but you can only play 1 game a week. If you're lucky, you can get a tee time.
I'm going to get to this view of yours of about weekend golf for workers, because I think it's really interesting. I've heard it mentioned in bars over the years, but you seem to have given it a little bit more thought than the people that maybe have said that before. But I don't want you to skip off the one point you were making there about the industry in general. And I'm just putting finishing touches to my blog about exactly what you just raised there about, not so much about the fluffy comments on Twitter, because I think unfortunately there's a hell of a lot of that in the golf industry in the UK. There are people out there that tweet a lot, and I think the first sentence of every other tweet is great to see blah blah blah, and it's like an endorsement of something. And there's not a great deal of content when you ever challenge them on what they might actually mean by that. Yeah. But I think the thing I've seen over the last few years is maybe certainly over the last 5 years, but 10 years as well, is a whole host of people, not from within golf clubs, that want to come and work within the golf industry and telling golf clubs and golfers what golfers want, and they don't want your membership anymore, your annual membership and everything else. People can't afford it. They don't want it. They don't want to be a member. They want the freedom to do this and the freedom to do that. And within 3 days of that not being what we provide as a market for the short term, we're inundated with membership applications. I was interested to hear that you've had a load.
Yeah.
Where I work, I've had a load. There's one club in my region that had 24 applications in 2 days.
Yeah.
Simply because not only they're members only, the market is members only. And all of a sudden, all of these people that we were told can't afford memberships and everything else. It's amazing what's happening now. It's the only way you can play golf. And I worked in South Wales in the financial crash. And it was at that time that the race to the bottom started in that region. I've spoken this on this podcast before. And it's, and I really, really hope that we don't make those same mistakes again. But it only takes 1 or 2 clubs to crack and say, oh no, right, we'll take visitors now for the sake of a few 20 quids. And it cracks the whole model. And so do I have any faith that the golf industry in general has got it in them to listen to that message that's there if we want to hear it at the moment? No, I don't have any confidence it will.
This is really where I would sort of look at it and say, this is where golf course or golf club committees need to step up and actually think strategically as if it was it is a commercial business at the end of the day. The fact that you don't, what does a golf club produce? It produces rounds of golf at the end of the day. at the moment, it can produce the average golf club. If it starts at 7:30 and its last tee time is 6 o'clock, it's going to produce what, 66, 69 rounds of golf a day. Yeah. So if you were running a business and you were saying we produce cars or whatever it is, how many units a day can you produce? How many units a week can you produce? How many a month, etc.? How much does it cost you to produce those units? That creates your base sale price. Now you want to make a profit. Obviously, if you're in a commercial, slightly different for golf clubs, but ultimately, no golf club can afford to tolerate a loss. And this interesting thing about the race to the bottom. Because for years, what golf courses have been doing is basically chasing money. We're desperate for cash. We need cash. So what are we going to do? Oh, we'll advertise a load of tee times through these online booking platforms that have sprung up. But we need to. But it's like, well, we need to raise some cash. So you can come and play our course for a tenner. So effectively, what you're saying is, okay, a round of golf, a tee time space at our course in that marketplace for a 4-ball costs 40 quid.
Yeah.
Now the reality of it is then my view is that what that created was what I term nomadic snobs. That they would sort of look on a booking site and sort of think, well, that course there is only charging a tenner a round, can't be very good. So we'll go down the road because this one's charging 25 quid. That's our tolerance level. We're prepared to pay £25 for a round of golf. So that one there down the road is charging 25 quid. So we'll go there because it's got to be better than the one that's charging a tenner a round. Yeah. So this whole perception of what's actually happened with this race to the bottom scenario is most golf clubs, my view, is they've undervalued or never actually been able to come to a realistic value as to what their product is worth.
What it is connected to what you're saying. How does someone get elected onto the committee at your club? Is it just they're put forward and they're the most popular person that's standing in the room at the AGM, or is it skills based or experience based in any way?
Certainly at our club, and I would imagine it's probably replicated in most clubs up and down the country. The committees are comprised of the people that are prepared to give their time up and put themselves forward to sit on a committee. What tends to happen at Scraptcoft is that we have when we have vacancies on a committee, we would ask for nominations or volunteers to sit on those committees. Or to put themselves forward to sit on a committee. People will volunteer, and then assuming we have enough volunteers, or rather if we have more than enough volunteers for spaces, yes, it's voted on at the AGM. More often than not, it's a case of we just about managed to scrape enough volunteers to fill the vacancies that exist. And then subsequently what happens is the volunteers' names are taken into the sort of the management committee meeting that's formed at the end of the AGM, and the chairman allocates the new volunteers to a committee. Now,
the reason I asked that, you see, is because you said that, you've said now committee should review their performance at the end of this, and also that the committee should be strategic, I think you said, and I think, like a strategic plan, that type of thing. And the reason I asked about how people get elected to committee and is it skills and experience based in any way, is that are they qualified to do that? That's the question, because and the reason I say that is, I mean, the last two clubs I've worked for, we're working on a strategic plan now, but it's not led by the committee, even though there are people on the committee that would be very well qualified. It's actually being run by suitably qualified members. They then report back into the committee. The same was true when I worked over at Kingsdown in Wiltshire, and we put it together in that way. I never named the club, but there was a time where I was on a finance committee, and that finance committee, by chance, because it was XYZ position, is on the finance committee, and we had a very successful, self-made millionaire businessman as a captain. We had a very experienced treasurer who was an accountant. Our chairman was somebody who basically sold multi-million-pound businesses worldwide for a living, and a nurse. The problem, the nurse would throw the spanner in the works quite often in that room, and would, you know, maybe block things, that sort of thing. And you know, that's why I asked, because you almost, once you put something into a committee meeting, by definition, it's a democratic process, and you have to accept whatever comes out of it. Is that committee at any club, is it qualified to carry out a to make an effective strategic plan that is going to work for the golf club and be passed by the membership? Because if it's not passed by the membership, it'll just end up sat in a draw.
Well,
2 years later, when a new chairman comes in.
That's the. I would never criticise any of the members that put themselves forward to sit on committee of any golf club.
I quite agree,
because ultimately it's a thankless task. 99.9% of the membership will always be of the same opinion when it comes to one thing, and that is the committee don't know what they're doing.
Oh, I tell you, my committee where I work now have had absolute pelters through this, and they have worked their socks off. Yeah. And this is, you know, and it's the same everywhere.
There's a phrase. There's a phrase that's used in sort of leadership and management development and various sort of other areas, which is managers get the teams that they deserve. And there's an argument that says that golf club members get the committees that they deserve. Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, there is no reason why any single member of any golf club with the right skills, knowledge, inclination could not become a member of the committee of their club. You know, most clubs are crying out for people with relevant skills, experience, enthusiasm, and and the willingness to put themselves forward to actually do it for the benefit of the club.
Do you think, given your experience, you know, when like you went on committee and you were a elected committee member at the time, do you well, I don't know, you may feel differently, but I worked at one club where it was entirely skills based. So if you wanted to be the director of property, you had to have a CV that would go on the board to show that you were qualified to be the director of property. The same for the director of finance. You know, there was a members services director as well, and you had to have a background in essentially dealing with people and, you know, service and that sort of thing. And if you didn't have a background in that, you weren't qualified for it, and you wouldn't be elected for it. And the worry with that, like you say, is, oh, well, blimey, it's hard enough to get people to put themselves forward. If you're specifically approached to join a professional board or committee based on your skills and experience to hold a certain office, I think that's more attractive and very different to, oh, will you come and be one of 13 in the meeting talking about sandwich prices and you know, the length of cutting greens and, you know, how much pay rise we give the staff and all that kind of thing. I do think it's a different question. I'm not saying every club would succeed in that way, but I think with regards to what you're saying, you know, the things that should be carried out in a professional business is do the people in any given committee in any given golf club have the skills and experience to do that? Well, because otherwise, you know, what comes out of these reviews and strategic plans might just be something that doesn't really help them in the future.
Well, certainly, you know, if I was sitting here, if we were sitting here having this conversation, and it was very much a case of, you know, what would your professional opinion be, rather than a captain of the golf club, and this is, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say anything other than be anything other than supportive of the committee that we have. That's not to say that when we've sat in meetings and subsequent communications that they don't know my views on certain things, and I know their views, and we have very frank exchanges. Because and realistically, that's the way I view that, is whether confrontation is the right word, but there has to be challenge. because
is fine. Yeah, absolutely.
And there has to be in that. My view is there has to be an acceptance that without challenge, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So they knew what I was going to be like from a personality perspective, and whether that's gone down well, I can't change, and I'm not going to. But it wasn't asked for, and I don't know whether it was particularly well received. But very early in my tenure as captain, we attended a management meeting, and I won't go into the specifics of it. But the subtext of the meeting was the treasurer gave his report, and he presented the findings of, or we'd come towards the end of our financial year. There was we'd had a very good 2019. We'd made a surplus, which was great, or profit. But obviously we'd come off the back of the wettest winter in record. Course had been pretty much unplayable since November. We'd had extensive shutdowns. And basically, the Treasurer's report highlighted the fact that our bar takings and our function bookings in the period today were substantially lower than they were in a comparable period the previous year.
Yeah.
And the rest of the meeting, which lasted for about 2 hours, effectively involved the discussion as to how the club were going to spend the surplus that had been made in 2019. So I sort of sat there and watched all of this and watched it all unfold. And after the meeting, I thought, right, what could I do that could potentially be a value add to our club, our committee, on the basis of what I've just seen? And I sort of sat down and wrote a summary of what I'd just witnessed in the equivalent of a board meeting for a business.
Yeah.
And the subtext was along the lines of, your meeting identified that you have a risk in your business, an impending risk that you should be looking to take action on, or at least develop some form of plan as to how you're going to mitigate the risk that has been identified. Because if your year maps out identically from here on in as it did the previous year, you're going to make a loss.
Mm-hmm.
But I listened to a 2-hour meeting where the elephant in the room either didn't get spotted, or if it did get spotted, got conveniently ignored, while something completely irrelevant took 2 hours.
Yeah.
And looking at this, my appraisal would be that, and it wasn't, when I read it back, I thought, well, perhaps it might be construed as critical, but I view the management committee of a golf club as effectively the board of directors.
Yeah.
The board of directors appointed by the shareholders, if you were putting it into business context, the shareholders being your members, your board of directors. And realistically, if that was a business, a commercial business with shareholders, and the shareholders had witnessed the report and said, we've identified, or it's been flagged up, that we've got a commercial risk in our business, but we're not going to do anything about that. We'll ignore that, pretend it doesn't exist, and we'll just focus on how we're going, whether we're going to have the car park tarmacked or buy a new mower or whatever it might be. So I put the report together, and the subtext was, thanks very much, but we'll get on it. We're aware of it. We're on it. And I sort of went back and thought, right, okay, well, is this endemic of what happens in the committees of a lot of golf courses? Because you've got your subcommittees which inform what's going to happen. You have a discussion in your management committee meeting. You nod and agree on various things, and then the meeting ends. And it struck me that in a business scenario, if that was a management team in a business, the managing director or the chief exec would say, right, okay, fine. So who's going to take responsibility for that? Or would actually say, that's your department, so you're in charge of that. And when we come back to the next meeting, I want you to have told us what you've done, how you've done it, and what the result has been.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem that I've seen is that because of the way the committees are structured, because of the fact that it's volunteer basis, ultimately there's no accountability or ownership of the problems.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm just a member like everybody else. Just because I sit on a committee, I've still got my day job, I've still got my life, or whatever. And who's going to sack me if I don't do anything about it? So it's a really difficult thing. And when I put the original tweet out about, I wonder how many golf clubs will look at this and say, right, on the back of what's happened now, what have we learned? What should we be learning? How do we use that learning to inform our strategy for the next 12 months, the next 3 years, the next 5 years? And I think it was a question without an answer, but it was really just to sort of open that debate, because my experience in many businesses is they think they deliver great customer service. They think their customers love them. Well, why is that? Well, they keep coming back. Well, that actually does that mean that they love you, or does it just mean that, well, they can't be bothered to move, or you've not done something badly enough at the moment to make them want to leave? And these actually are all relevant questions that golf clubs should be asking themselves at the moment. And
do you survey your members?
No. Not in what I would consider a robust survey. Now, and to me, there's all sorts of tools that golf club could access to deliver a really robust survey that members complete.
I believe in them passionately, and referring back to them when committees are talking about something, and just remind them that what was in the survey. Where I work now, I'm quite lucky. They do remember what the members have said. But now there's a bit of a trend going as well now within golf, pushed a lot by the clubs maybe that work with companies like 59 Club on the customer service level. And it's not so much this. You still have your maybe annual or duannual club survey where you ask a whole lot of questions about everything, but just lots of little surveys going out there. And I did one last year. We were looking at maybe changing brewers. So instead of just going off the perception of a couple of people that work there about what people might like, we just ran it, right, what are your favourite draft beers, lagers and ciders? So then when we got the new supplier in, we said, right, these are the products that we want because this is what the members have essentially chosen. And then, if somebody criticises the choices you've made, you say, well, it's been a democratic process. Which beers are on the bar? And the ability to have data in that way is quite important. And you've obviously, with your background, you rely on data. You've spoken, about how you would methodically look at things. So I'm interested as a club captain and as, the person that's been on a committee and uses phrases like active membership and things like that. What's your view on booking? This is for us all at the moment. Even the 80-odd% in the country that don't normally operate booking systems, we're having our first experience of them at the moment. So on a golf club management level, what's your opinion on booking?
On a prima facie level, I think the concept of booking a tee time is essential. The idea of sort of turning up, and I've seen it. It happens. Scraptcoft's brilliant. Oh, it used to be brilliant for it. We've got a really great setup on a Sunday morning. Probably get 150 golfers that play on a Sunday morning, but with no tee booking system, it's literally you get there in the summer at 7 o'clock and probably won't tee off until 8 o'clock. And it's accepted. It's the way it was, but it's bloody frustrating when you think I could have had extra half an hour in bed and know what time I was playing. So for me, the actual implementation of a tee booking system, I think, is crucial on many levels. Most importantly, gives the members an opportunity to have clarity of when they're playing. But actually, if you look at this outside of the sort of excessive demand that we're seeing at the moment, if you were running a business without a tee booking system or the ability to forecast where you have spare capacity in your business or spare revenue generating opportunities potentially, it's very hard to actually capitalize on it. So you know, the principle of actually every club implementing a booking system that states that you must to be able to play, you must reserve a tee. You can't just turn up and play, even if it's a ring the pro shop half an hour before. Is there anything available, pro? Or log online now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Fully in agreement with it. I think my issue specifically at the moment is more the demand and supply aspect associated with actually booking tees.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing, and you know, our club chairman and club treasurer are acutely aware of it because I've made my feelings on the subject known to them. You know, we've had a lot of, we've had pretty much, I think I worked it out. I've attended, we at Scraptcoft on it's traditionally on a Sunday, 1 o'clock, captain's bell, you stand up, do a speech, you know, get the mick taken out of you and what have you. I think in 5 months I've done 3, you know, so that's as many weeks as it's been open, you know. Now we've had members that all the way through, the majority of our members pay monthly on direct debit. So it'd be very easy for them to just say, well, the golf course is shut, I'm going to cancel my direct debit, I'm going to walk away. Right. In the main, the membership is stuck by the club. They've carried on putting the money into the coffers to keep the club going. And obviously now we're reopening, and you get to this point where it's like, well, look, there's massive demand. Nobody's played for 5 months, or certainly last 3 months. Everybody wants to get out and play, and I appreciate that. But there's a sort of a perception I felt, not only at our club, but in the wider golf community, that everybody is not working at the moment. And therefore, you know, the perception of a weekend doesn't exist because nobody's at work. So, you know, there's 7 days in a week and weekends don't exist. So basically, you know, you get to play when you get to play. And my sort of challenge around that was that we know that there are people that are working, whether they're nurses, doctors, shop workers, delivery drivers. We know there are people that have been working all the way through this. And we know that there are people that actually their only potential opportunity to get around a golf is a Saturday and a Sunday. And
it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's a real interesting one. It's interesting generally, but even before you take today's complication out of it, because obviously I hear a lot. I mean, my dad is like stereotypical golf club member. He, you know, honestly, the stuff he comes out with about golf clubs and that he's heard from other people, that sort of thing in the bar. You know, he could be a parody Twitter account some days when he comes home and he's had a bad experience from a golf club and that sort of thing. You know, a lady has won a mixed Stableford, so well, I don't mind them playing, but they should play off the whites. That kind of thing. You know, you think, well, the handicap's not built from the whites, Dad. This type of thing. But I think I play golf with my dad on a Saturday in a competition, and I think because we do that, that's the reason that he stays a 7-day member at the club that we play at. We offer 6-day membership, which is basically to try and keep people out of the peak day if they don't want to play in the comp. Yeah. But I think he and his friends retired now. They would all argue, oh, we should be able to have 5-day membership. Yeah. And I say, you play 4 days a week, mine, Dad. You know, so, but the guys who were paying 7-day membership, I'm one of them. Yeah. I get 1 a week if I'm lucky, as long as it's not pouring with rain. This is the, you know, that's the general anomaly in that, you know, 5-day membership is cheaper, but they play a lot more golf generally than maybe the 7-day guys on the weekend. This was one of the things I picked up on Twitter from you that sort of really caught my eye early doors with you. There was that I thought, I understand that argument, but how on earth do you make it happen in a golf club of 600 people? I mean, has anyone given any thought to that? Well, I mean, the reality of where I was coming from it, and it's how do you work it out? But you know, the first is, and I can only comment for our club's membership. The reality of it is that I traditionally have played Saturday morning and Sunday morning. There's probably on a regular basis 20 to 30 guys that have historically played both Saturday and Sunday. You know, that's at a push.
Now, in the current situation, if you went through that list of 30 odd names, how many of those 30 people can play in the week? And this is the argument that I'm hearing coming back. Well, they'll just have to find time to play in the week. If they wanted a game, they'd find time. And it's like, well, what if this guy lives 15 miles away from the golf club and he works another 45 miles away from the golf club and he's working Monday to Friday? He's got a 7-day membership, which is the best part of 1,100 quid a year, and he's stuck with you. This guy has historically, under normal circumstances, played Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon, or Saturday morning and Sunday morning. And in the current climate, what you're actually saying to him, our club has taken the stance you can't play on consecutive days, or you can't book to play on consecutive days. So effectively what we're saying to this guy is, you're paying £100 a month, near enough, and you're going to get, because you're only allowed to play one round of golf, because your circumstances dictate that you could play Saturday and Sunday, but our rule says you can't book to play consecutively. You're going to play a maximum of 4 rounds of golf a month over the coming, however long it takes, 25 quid a round. The flip side of this is, you've got people that are on the furlough scheme who are now currently demonstrating that they can play any day of the week. We've still implemented this. You can't book to play consecutive days. But in theory, they could play 4 days a week, and then on the days that they've not booked, log into the T booking system, see there's a space, and say, right, nobody's taken that space, I'm going to go and play again today. So they could play 7 days a week. If they're paying full member rates of £100 a month, not that I couldn't see how anybody could play 28 rounds of golf in a month. I think that would be.
I've come across some. Yeah, definitely in my time, I've come across some that do.
You start to see, is there a degree of fairness in that? And I really, where I was coming to it from the first perspective is, do golf clubs who've demanded loyalty from their members throughout the first 5 months of the year, which have been catastrophic financially, and they've demanded loyalty from the members, expected loyalty from their members, do they not really, or should they not really grasp the concept that loyalty is a two-way street? And that actually you might want to impose a wider mandatory requirement that says we would prefer, or we're going to say no consecutive bookings. But if you know that you've got a very, very small number of individuals, would you not consider making the exception to say?
Can I ask you a question on it? Let me ask you a question. I play. I know a lot of more experienced, maybe who've been in it a long time, club managers and greenkeepers. I play a little game just with myself. I never share anything that I see, but it brings a wry smile to my face sometimes, and it's spot the committee decision. And it can be daft things. Sometimes I'll walk into another golf club that I don't necessarily know and spot something. You'll see a beautifully refurbished bar and 2 tatty old sofas in the corner, and you'll think a couple of committee people wanted that sofa to stay. But when you said you can't book on consecutive days, now I've sat through Zoom meetings with probably up to 40 Southwest region managers, with then in South Wales as well, with maybe 20-25 South Wales based managers, and it was new to a lot of us, booking and putting it in, and the rules that we were going to put in place. And there's not uniformity. Some people are, you can only book for 3 days in advance. Some have been that you can only book once a week. We've gone for, you can book twice a week. But if there are gaps, you can ring up the shop and have additional, but you can only book twice, 2 in a week. So, the people that want to are getting their 3rd and 4th game, but we're giving equal opportunity. But when you said that policy of you can't book consecutive days, I thought, there's a committee involved there, because because it's not something that's common practice, and it's been dreamt up with good intentions by somebody, and a small number of people have said, oh yeah, let's do that. So
yeah.
the
Well, I think
policy is what creates your problem that you're describing, isn't it?
I think my view on it is I think the rationale behind allowing or implementing you can't book on consecutive days policy was because perhaps the thought process was, if we do that, it's better than us imposing a limit that says you can only play 3 times a week as a maximum.
Yeah.
Because effectively, by saying you can't book a tee time on consecutive days, you're still not stopping anybody from playing 7 times a week. So you've not imposed a maximum golf limit, other than on the individuals who, because of their personal circumstances, whether it's they're looking after kids because their wife's a nurse and they're furloughed at the minute, but they can't run off the golf club to go and play golf because they've got the kids. You're not imposing a limitation on the vast majority of your membership, potentially, but the ones that you are on a small proportion.
Yeah.
And I guess where the reason that, and it comes back to this sort of my business mind would sort of say to me, if you were going to be taking a forward-thinking, pessimistic view of the situation, you've got a number of members that you can very clearly identify are still currently working Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
Now, there's an argument that would state the likelihood of those individuals subsequently losing their jobs over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, 12 months and beyond, is perhaps lower than individuals that are currently on the furlough scheme and benefiting from being able to play every other day.
Yeah.
So if I was looking at that from a risk mitigation strategy and thinking, where's my most likely long-term client base, the people that are likely to not leave our business because they can't afford to stay with us, but because they choose to leave us because basically we've let them down or they've become dissatisfied with us. And so to me, as a business decision, it would be a case of they perhaps should be your most valuable customers at the moment. Yeah, okay, you've retired over 70s who for years golf clubs have been saying our market's in turmoil because the majority of our membership is over 70 or is of retirement age, and we're not getting youngsters into the game. Well, I bet you're glad you've got loads of over 70s at the minute because they're largely their income is unaffected. So that is secure revenue, but your working age membership, to me, I would be sitting there and saying, these are the people that we need to be putting an arm round and actively protecting. And that's where my argument to sort of come round and say, if you know that you've got a very small number of these people that traditionally have played 2 rounds of golf a week on a Saturday and a Sunday, and in a lot of clubs, it won't be a massive number.
No.
I say in our club, if you went traditionally through the books, I would say you're probably talking a maximum of 30 blokes. My recommendation as a business consultant would be you should be looking and treating those individuals as your sweet spot customers. Now, the response that may come back.
I get your argument completely. And my thing is always on operations, and I just say, how on earth would I do that operationally? It sounds to me though that, I mean, on a more basic level than obviously the business points that you're making, when you know that you have people that are back working, that sort of thing, you're not, I don't think it's not providing equality, that policy, is it? Because still to this day, the best committee man I've ever encountered, and I've had some good ones in 15 years, was on the first committee of the first club I ever worked for. Anyone watching or listening from Radda Golf Club would his name's Nick Cook. He was terrific. He wasn't the captain, he wasn't the chairman, he was a committee person. Quite often, he had a similar background to yourself, actually, and quite often he would sit and occasionally would just say, right, can I just ask, what is it that we're trying to achieve from this discussion or this thing? And when you said earlier, and that's why I asked about the every other day policy, if the objective was to limit people to 3 or 4 rounds a week, then why not just limit people to 3 or 4 rounds a week? Because I tell you, my intention, and also lots of the clubs in and around me, and we've been networking and sharing best practice, but we've had advice from places like Denmark that opened 6-7 weeks before us by being part of this network, and the advice from them was limit lots of things early doors, and then assess how it suits you and your club, because these are the mistakes that we made, and then add it back. I mean, in the case of where I work now, we're limiting members to 2 rounds a week at the moment. When I get in on Monday morning next week, I will have a look at the tee sheets. I'll have a look at the data of how many played 2, how many played 1, that sort of thing. And I'll start the work towards making it 3.
Yeah.
And if by Wednesday the data exists to make it 3, that's what we'll do. But we've at least, in this case, whether you're a working person, a retired person, whether you live 1 mile away or 21 miles away, our policy has provided equality of opportunity. Now, if your personal circumstances don't allow you 2 rounds a week, that's up to you. But there's nothing there that's gonna create the type of problem you've described. So if your objective is to not allow more than 3 or 4 rounds a week unless there's a gap, well, why not just make that the policy?
Well, and as I say, there's no right or wrong, and as I say, it's not a direct criticism. So,
no, it's well intentioned. The policy is well intentioned, isn't it?
Well, it's more about. It goes back to what the point of the post that I put around. What will you learn from how you've handled this situation? And my biggest fear, I guess, if I was looking at this, would be if in 6 months' time, when your membership renewals go out, and you get a series of individuals come back and say, "I'm not going to renew my membership this year," and these are individuals. And the response that if and when which we do as a club, or any club should ask its customers why they're leaving. If the response comes back was, "Well, I work Monday to Friday, and for the last 3 months, or for the 3 months when things got through the peak of the summer, I was only able to get 1 game of golf because of the rules that you enforce. So I'm going to just take my business elsewhere. You valued me that much that I'm going to leave."
Yeah.
If that situation happened, how would you look back on the decision that you've made now?
Yeah.
And you're quite right. The point that you made is that ultimately committees are put in place to make a decision. I think that the majority of them will have applied a policy of some description. And the fundamental driver is to try and get as many people playing as much golf as possible.
Yeah.
Good intentions, because 100%. Because we're acknowledging the fact that members have stuck by us. They've had little or no golf for 5 months. Let's get them back out on the course and give them as much opportunity to play as we possibly can. But there's a very small section of your customer base that's penalising. The approach that you've taken to doing it is directly penalising them. Yeah. And if you were a customer in that situation, how would you feel valued?
Yeah.
And so I would look at it in a piece of business consultancy as that is a potential risk that you should be identifying, and what can you do to mitigate or minimize that risk? Yeah. Now, if the response is, well, actually, we don't need to worry about that because we're only talking about maybe 20 members, and most of them have been with us for 20 years, so they might have a bit of a bitch and a moan about it, but when it comes down to it, they're not going to leave. Oh, we've also attracted all these new members that have come in. So if they do decide to leave, we've topped the pool up anyway. If that's your approach, hey, great. My caveat response to that would be, most of these members all of these members will be 7-day members. So they're paying top whack fees at your golf club. What have you replaced them with?
Yeah.
You replaced them with 7-day members. Have you replaced them with 5-day members, 6-day members? And more relevantly, I'm guessing these new members that you've recruited are on incentive-based low entry price points that are substantially lower than the
do that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a policy, I've never I've never done that no matter where I've worked, and I've worked at clubs that sometimes where we damn needed members. But it's that race to the bottom I described.
It's commonplace in the industry, isn't it? You know, that there's this perception, and it comes down to demand and supply again. You know, that you know, we're been acutely aware that it was, you know, why would somebody join a golf club and pay £100 a month on the premise that they're then going to play the same course every week, 2 or 3 times every week of the year? Why would you do that? Why not just go and spend your money and play when you want to play, and not have the risk of the weather being rubbish and the course being closed, or, you know, whatever. What we've got now is a situation, and that perpetuated this drive down in price point, because, you know, we want to attract regular income, so we'll offer a reduced price, and we'll hope that we get people in. And, you know, Golf England produce all the stats that says if you can get somebody in on a membership and keep them for 3 years, they'll stay for 10. You know, I'm not quite sure how they work it out, but there must be some sort of structure behind it. And so a lot of clubs have developed this sort of reduced price basis. Well, there's an argument now that if you've gone down that route in the past because, you know, that was the only way you could attract members into your club, is that the right way to be doing it at the minute? The market's telling you that the only way people can play golf is because if they're a member of your club. You're introducing these members in. Well, they've got to join you or another club if they want to play golf locally. You're inviting them in, you're accepting their money, you're giving them a substantial discount over your established client base, and potentially giving them better access and better treatment. Now, we've seen it, you know, it's become an industry standard in telephones, car, you know, what you name it, insurance. You know, this perception that actually a new customer is more valuable than an established customer, so you've got to give them better pricing. You know,
the thing as well with that is that if you sell on price, if your primary marketing pinch point is price, and that's how you're going to hook people in, you're going to attract people that are always going to be attracted based on price. So if you then have to put them up to full membership a year into it, 2 years in, as I've seen some clubs, they will start looking for the nearest shiny object somewhere else and the nearest offer, and they're gone. So if you sell on price, that's what you'll lose them on one day as well. So it can be quite short-termist. It's
so, and again, you know, in terms of it comes back to what I was alluding to earlier on. You know, if I was a nomadic golfer in the current marketplace, who enjoys, you know, I enjoy a round of golf. I'm currently furloughed, but I'm getting paid full whack. I know that's likely to carry on until October, and the only way, so I've got a load of time on my hands, the same amount of revenue that I'm used to having potentially, a load of time on my hands, but the only way I can go and do the thing that I would normally do in my leisure time, which is play golf, is if I join a club. I'd have a scout around, see what the local incentive offers are, and I'd just go and join a club for the premise of playing for 3 months. And for want of a better description, I'd rape it for everything that it was worth for 3 months. See how the land lies, and then wave off into the sunset. Now, I have no issue per se if clubs are still going to persist with a reduced pricing structure for new members. Great. But I would be arguing in the current climate, that's fine, offer them the reduced fee, but tell them it's 6 months up front. If you want to come and be a member, you're going to have to pay now for the rest of the year. Yes,
is that common in your region then? That sort of reduced price
thing? Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
It seems to be quite regional. There are some where you won't find it. There's not a lot in and around the sort of Bristol area and that sort of thing at all in that sense. There was a little bit of it in the sort of South Wales area that I had a bit of experience of. Not too much though on membership. The one membership thing that I do see, and you've probably seen it in your region if it's price based, is the whole get the winter for free. But to be fair, the only agreement I would have with that is that generally the clubs that offer that are hardly open all winter. So it's actually it's like a marketing ploy, but it's also I think it's quite ingenuous in some cases.
Well, it's again, and you'll have seen the comments and the various feeds. You know, like most clubs, in fact, probably like all clubs. You know, we had various dissatisfied members because our policy that was basically, look, we're not going to suspend membership fees whilst we're closed. You know, we're going to ask you to continue to pay fees. We'll accommodate you if you can't. You know, we'll support you if you can't, but we'd like, you know, we're still going to charge you, and we'll come to an arrangement between now and an agreed period of time how that money's paid back. So we, you know, we're not going to give anybody a sort of a rent-free period, as it were. No. I saw you, and you know, all the comments, fors and against, you know, club members jumping up and down saying, "Oh, it's great, you know, our club has suspended our membership payments. We've not got to pay, or they're going to give us 3 months extra next year." And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but from a business perspective, you know, all that's doing is shunting your revenue gap further down the line. You're not.
My club's done it. My club's done something similar, and you know, my club, like I said, we've got a damn hard working treasurer at our club, and he has worked his socks off the last 2-3 years to get to a point where we're virtually break even for the last financial year before all of this hit, and you know, they made it. And mine's a club with no manager as well, so no real sort of finger in the pie to know what everyone else is doing in the region. And I think our offer was however many months you closed for, we'll give a pro rata of that. You can either have it off your subs next year, so you're reducing your revenue next year. You can have it on your bar card, so the club only gets half of it because it loses half to buy in the stock that you're going to consume.
Yeah.
And the third option, which I think a big chunk of members will do now, you're talking probably 170, 180 quid each that we're owed, is you can have it on your pro shop account. Now the pro is a separate business, so all of that money is out of the club.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out, because on a pure service level, and you know, looking after the members, which I know is always in the forefront of their mind, I can't fault it, because I'm thinking, well, it's virtually that putter I've been looking at, that isn't it?
Yeah.
Happy days for me.
I was loving it.
I wonder, times by 200, 300 odd people, I wonder this time next year how it will look. I wish them well with it, because if they put it off, great.
Yeah.
But,
when I saw that, it's just like you are immediately creating a massive hole in your cash flow for next year, you know. And now the argument might be, well, yeah, but at least we're buying ourselves some time to.
I've heard that.
Recoup, you know,
we were pressed quite hard as club managers across the country, because a few clubs did it. We were pressed really, really hard that we should be doing the same as X, Y, Z club are doing, that sort of thing. And obviously, we would explain. I mean, I made it sort of one of my rules through the lockdown that I would respond to every email that came in about anything. You know, so there was an auto, you know, reply saying, look, it's madness. I may not be able to reply to everything, but I made it one of my sort of rules that I would do it, because everyone deserved an explanation about the thing they were annoyed about. But we had quite a lot of it, and that's the problem, that you know, that there wasn't maybe enough understanding that these golf clubs that are very nice places and very grand looking when you arrive don't sit there with huge pots of cash. And so most often when I explained that to people, either by email or on the telephone, that look, clubs don't sit on huge reserves. We can't kick £150,000 down the road. We need to deal with it now. Most were at least understanding, even if they didn't accept the answer. You know. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, and you know, it's to me, you know, it really sort of comes out to now that it would be a case of, like, if I was sitting here in a professional capacity, advising a business, a golf club business, you know, what would my considered professional opinion be as to what you should be looking to do now, with the situation that you find yourself in? No bar revenue for the next couple of months as a minimum. Potentially very little, if any, society play. Maybe no visitor booking, either A, because you're not allowed to advertise visitor space, or the demand from your members is such that there actually just isn't, they're booking all the tee times that are up, so you've got nothing to sell, particularly if you've not rigidly applied that maximum 3 games for members, which potentially might leave you another 40 or 50 tee times a week that you can sell to bring some revenue in. If I was sitting here saying, right, what should your club be doing to try and sort of trade through this and beyond, really coming back to now some really crucial things. I'd be looking at every management committee or every management team to really do a very robust SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities and threats, to really drill down into, where do we sit? And the harsh reality of that is, if you ask most golf clubs or most golf club committees, what's the strength of your business?
Yeah.
Up there, you would get, well, we're a picturesque, well-maintained 18-hole golf course.
I've been through it. I've been through this process at 2 clubs. It is interesting. It throws up some really interesting answers when you do the SWOT analysis, and quite often things you haven't thought about, even when you're working in the business, hours and hours a week. Yeah. But you're right. It does throw up. So I mean, the one, every club says, "Oh, we're a welcoming club," and I've worked for one club where I thought, are you sure that we've?
I mean, we say that we're a welcoming club. Oh, great! We're welcoming to the point that nobody puts themselves down as a 1-ball to give somebody another 1-ball a chance to play. That sort of acid test to it. This thing about what's your biggest strength? Oh, well, we're a well-maintained 18-hole golf course with picturesque views. Well, to be honest, actually, well-maintained 18-hole is not a strength. That's an essential. It's actually understanding the concept of what is the real strength of your offer. As a starting point, in terms of really getting to grips with understanding what our business is, where we're at, that has got to be a massive starting point. Now, some golf clubs may sit there and think, well, we, because of the way our club is structured, because of the way our committees are structured, we don't have the ability, the understanding, the wherewithal to actually be able to do that sort of stuff. So I would be strongly advocating that every golf club, certainly those that are sort of trading under a business umbrella, and most golf courses are operating under some form of limited liability capacity now. Certainly, if you're in England, you should be making contact with the local economic partnership growth hub. Now basically, so without getting into too much detail, in every area there is something called a LEP, a local economic partnership. So there'll be a Lincolnshire LEP or a Greater Lincolnshire LEP, the Southwest LEP. There's sort of Birmingham and Solihull. There's West Midlands. And ultimately these are organisations that were created to support growth in the local economy, to build local economic plans, and through them they deliver, guess what, business support. Now, within all of these LEPs, through the growth hubs, you'll be able to access specialist advice that may include actually getting access to a skilled advisor to come in and spend some time with your management team.
Yeah, that's good advice.
If you've not got the wherewithal to do it internally, get somebody in that can help you to do it. More importantly, through the local economic partnerships, and this will, out the back of the economic crash that is coming through the government, there is going to be a raft of business support funding. Now, we might be familiar with the business continuity, business continuation loans, etc., rate rebates, and so on and so forth. But there are other specialist targeted business schemes. Now, that might be helping you to develop a growth strategy or a recovery strategy. It might be better understanding use of digital marketing. Sam spoke last week from a professional standpoint, but clubs might not have the internal knowledge or the ability to develop their own social media content. They might not even base understand how Twitter and Instagram and Facebook work. You know, but through the growth hubs, there's access to all of these resources, largely which are free, that for many golf clubs they've never even experienced
never
or
heard of
accessing them.
I think that's pretty good advice, really. And I would say, golf club wise, I would say that's a pretty good place to maybe go a little bit more pleasant on the topics, the last few questions, that sort of thing.
Definitely,
I would endorse that, because what you're essentially saying is get some expertise in if you haven't got it. And I back that up every day, in not only golf, in every business. And I think we don't do enough of it as a country. We've gone away from expertise, haven't we? Politicians standing on podiums saying, I think this country's had enough of experts. I mean, what a statement to make. But I think he was probably right.
Well, I mean, Golf England, to be fair, the club support officers through Golf England or England Golf have done they do a great job.
Yeah, they work hard when they're not furloughed.
Yeah. Again, they do a fantastic job, but they're golf specific. And I think now is perhaps the time for golf clubs to think as businesses, to think outside of golf, and see it from a commercial perspective. Ultimately, if you're not creating revenue, you're going to die. It's simple. So that analysis piece around a strengths weaknesses scenario, which will identify how you can perhaps create more revenue, short, medium, and longer term. Beyond that, really, then it's got to come down to the creation of a really strong, robust strategy. And the strategy, having a strategy is great, but it's no good if it then sits on the chairman's desk or in the manager's drawer or something.
I've seen it. I've started jobs at 2 clubs, actually, not the one I work at now, where I've found what is actually a very well written business plan and strategic plan in a drawer that looked like it had been written 4 or 5 years previously. But crucially, it wasn't something that was passed through its membership. So it had been written by a committee in isolation in their own bubble, and then a new chairman and a couple of new people come onto a committee and a new captain, and they almost say, no, we're not doing that. We're moving on. But I totally support what you're saying there, but making sure they stick to it.
Well,
as well.
Get to the strategy is one point, but then the reality beyond that is that you've then got to get into the depth of drawing up some specific action plans. Turning a strategy into, strategy is one thing. There's got to be action that comes from it, and that then again ultimately it comes back to the strength of your committee structure, both the quality of the individuals that are in it, the chair or whoever is sitting at the top, ultimately driving that board to take responsibility and accountability for the action plans that are developed, because ultimately something physical has got to be done with it. Fairies aren't going to turn up overnight and magic you a social media strategy or develop a new greens maintenance plan. Somebody's got to take ownership and responsibility for it, and they've got to be held to account. So ultimately, make sure that there is that acceptance that somebody who sits at the top of the tree is going to challenge who's doing what, and more importantly, be prepared to take action. That if it's not being delivered, there's accountability and there's implications. And if that is a case of actually, Mr. Chair of social and marketing, you've not come up with a plan, and you have come up with a plan, but you've not done anything with it, and that's happened for the last 3 meetings. I'm sorry, you're not fit for purpose. I'm going to remove you from the position. And it's a horrible thing to say, because it's personality, it's relationships. But every single management team in every single golf course really should now be looking at this and saying, if this was my livelihood, would I be satisfied with what we're doing at the moment?
That's a very good, and I think you've just created a clip for before this the whole episode goes out, because I think the last couple of minutes there is something that a lot of people will be able to identify with, resonate with, and I think a few pennies might drop from that. So cool. I'll move on to some more informal stuff. I've given you pre-warning of some of these. So, favourite course that you've played, and you're not allowed to say where you're captain. That would be a cop-out.
No. To be honest, favourite course is the old course, Villamora.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I've only played it once in a lifetime so far. But literally, I don't think I've ever sort of stepped onto a golf course and thought, "Wow, this is like one tough, two really, really pretty, and three immaculate condition." You know, it was. You know, I played on a beautiful day with good company. Played like a dog, but it didn't really matter. You know, it was fantastic. So that if I go back, old course would be the one that I go to.
I ask everyone, just down the road from Villamora, have you played Salgados in Portugal?
No, I've not. No,
devastated. I'll find somebody someday that's played it. My captain last year had played it, so misery loves company.
A lot of the guys from Scraptcoft go to Portugal and they've played it and they rave about it. Absolutely,
it's too much water. Anyway, I'll find someone one day and I'll have a chat with them about it. But if you haven't been there, you can't appreciate it. So, if you could change one rule at your club and there not be any fireworks or anything about it, just one rule that, you know, sort of just makes your teeth itch whenever you come across it, what would it be?
You know, generally, I wouldn't say there's any. I can't think of any. You know, you gave me 2 hours worth of warning, and there's
that's great. That's great. I'd love to be able to see that where I play. There aren't too many daft rules. They've relaxed over the years as well. I mean, they did have one at one point where you could wear jeans in the clubhouse from a certain time on a Friday until close on Saturday. But every other day, jeans were unacceptable. And that was one of those times where I thought, there's a committee there.
No, we're pretty much up there. You know, we've got. You can wear jeans in the clubhouse. You know, we don't have the you've got to wear knee-high socks rule. You know, we're fairly sort of, you know, we're fairly up to speed with bringing things in. There was one thing that probably struck me, and I wondered if Tiger Woods turned up to play in one of his mock neck, sort of round neck T-shirt things on a Saturday afternoon, would he be allowed to play? Because we do have the sort of no collared shirts only rule.
All right, okay.
But again, you know, I don't know whether we would. I think that's more. It's a case if you can't wear a T-shirt, it's got to be sports specific type stuff. But you know, the one thing I can't fault our committee on over the course of the last couple of years is they've really sort of captured a change in society and what's socially acceptable and what's required really to attract people to want to stay in your clubhouse after they've had a round of golf. So I wouldn't.
That's really good. I think you're lucky then, because in some cases there's far too many. And last one, the dinner party one, and I did give you a little bit of advance warning of this, because what I've been finding is people can usually get 2 or 3 off, and then they struggle with the last one. So dinner party, 5 guests from you.
Dinner party guests, right? Start Ricky Gervais. I think to spend a couple of hours in the company of that character would be would be memorable. So definitely Ricky Gervais. My granddad, who passed away when I was 16.
I think I'd be the same. Yeah,
love to have my granddad back to spend some time, just to sort of to sort of ask him what he thinks of the person that I've become. And so that would be that'd be nice to spend some more time with him. Sevi, I'd ask. I think
every single person so far has said Sevi, so he is winning by a mile.
Yeah, just because if you're of an age where, I mean, my earliest golfing memory was watching him win the Open in, I think, 79. And I didn't play golf. I wasn't interested in golf, but it was on BBC. You know, when you actually watch golf for 4 days on the BBC. and I sat and watched it with my grandpa and my nan. Neither of whom were interested in golf, but it was on the TV, and so obviously that was my first, and just sort of, I think just to sort of get his take on the game, life, what it's all about. I think that would be fantastic. In terms of somebody else that I think to spend some time in their company would be really interesting, Winston Churchill. And probably very relevant in a crisis time now to sort of see how, his views on what he dealt with and how he dealt with that versus the leadership that perhaps we're encountering, good and bad nowadays. So just to have that individual in the room, and without being sort of too political, Donald Trump, just to see if he really is mad.
Killed me. You've just killed me. That man.
You talked earlier on, and I sometimes, if you watch what he does on the TV, you don't know whether it's been clipped. You have to give him, to a degree, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But you see the stuff that he puts on Twitter, or somebody puts on Twitter for him, and it is almost along the lines of, this can't be real. This has to be a parody. Where's the hidden?
I keep waiting to be told it's all a wind-up.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I did the other day? He's been doing these 2-hour press conferences, isn't he? Almost every day, and they're trying to get him to stop doing it. His team. I actually sat, because you said, you never know whether it's been clipped.
Yeah.
Sat and watched it in its entirety. It is incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's just the sort of scary. There are so many scary things where if it is legit. So actually, to spend a couple of hours in his company and just to sort of see.
Okay, I'll let you have him then. I'll let you have it on that basis. I'll let you have it. I thought you were going to put a red hat on or something.
Test him out, because it's almost a scenario. And I'll put the caveat on that. I'm an awful cook, so I could be doing the world a favour if he came to dinner at my house.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
But no, I think it make for certainly having Donald and Donald Trump and Ricky Gervais sat around the same table might be interesting. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, what better way to end than Donald Trump, eh? But just like to say so.
So at least we'd cut him some slack because he likes his golf. So
yeah, well, that's true. Well, just like to say, sir, really, Marcus, has been great, and it's been every bit what I expected it to be. Having read, obviously, some of your, the headlines of some of your views on Twitter and that sort of thing, and stay active with that, I would say, and keep doing it, because I will put your little Twitter handle in the bio for underneath this. It was on YouTube, so you may get some followers from it, because I would say to anyone in the golf industry, we can sometimes get sucked into our own little bubble of only talking to golf club managers and greenkeepers, only talking to greenkeepers, and you don't necessarily find too many people that are willing to talk so often and so openly that actually are within another bubble within golf, as in committees and captaincy and that sort of thing, because you do see, as we alluded to at the start of the conversation, a lot of sort of fluffy, woolly sort of, isn't everything wonderful type tweets, and sometimes you don't get necessarily what people think. But I can certainly say that you speak your mind on Twitter as you have here today, and people should should follow that, and it's well worth it.
Definitely.
Thanks very much.
Thanks to you for the introduction. I've got so much editing to do now, so that you can condense this into a useful piece. But
no, not at all. I mean, edit-wise, I let it run as long as it runs. I've done ones that were just under an hour. This is probably the longest one I've done so far. But that's absolutely no problem.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing some of your stuff going out there. Wish you every success as you go back to the day job. And to every golfer out there, every golf club captain, enjoy the rest of your captaincy year, captains. I know it's not the year that any of us will have wished for,
No.
Hopefully we'll make the most of the next 6 months. Keep safe, everybody, and enjoy your golf.
Thanks very much. Thanks,
No worries. Keep safe.
Thanks, Darren.
Cheers. Bye.